If you've ever felt the sting of family rejection, you know exactly how it can twist your heart. Please drop a like on this video and subscribe if you've ever dealt with toxic family members. Your support helps us share these important stories with others who need to hear them. It was a perfect summer evening in Maine. The restaurant terrace overlooked the Atlantic, waves crashing dramatically against the cliffs below. I could see my entire family, all 23 of them, through the floor-to-ceiling windows, laughing and toasting at 3 long tables pushed together in the private dining room. My brother Thomas stood up, raising his glass for what appeared to be yet another heartfelt speech. I couldn't hear his words through the glass, but I could see my mother dabbing her eyes with a napkin while my father beamed with pride. I was seated at a small table on the outdoor terrace, alone, nursing a glass of scotch, the same scotch I'd been gifted for my 40th birthday last year by people who now wouldn't acknowledge my existence. The waiter approached, his face a practiced mask of professional courtesy. "Would you like to order now, sir?" he asked. I nodded, choosing the simplest item on the menu. As he turned to leave, I said, "One more thing." I pointed toward the private room. "I'd like to pay for their entire bill, all of it, but I don't want them to know until I've left." The waiter blinked, his professional mask slipping for just a second as he looked between me and the boisterous family gathering inside. "Of course, sir," he said finally. "I'll arrange it with the manager. My name is James Harrington. 3 months ago, I was the CFO of my family's shipping company, Harrington Maritime, a position I'd held for 15 years. 3 months ago, I still had a family. I was the middle child of 3 sons. My father, William Harrington, built Harrington Maritime from a single fishing boat into the largest private shipping operation on the eastern seaboard. My older brother Thomas was the face of the company, charming, handsome, perfect for client relations. My younger brother Michael was the creative one, always coming up with innovations to make our ships more efficient. And I was the numbers guy, the one who made sure we actually turned a profit. For 15 years, I'd worked 80-hour weeks. I'd missed anniversaries, birthdays, even my own wedding rehearsal dinner because of work emergencies. My wife eventually left me, tired of competing with spreadsheets and financial projections. I barely noticed. Company was my life, my purpose, my entire identity, and I was good at it. Under my financial leadership, Harrington Maritime had tripled in value. My father was turning 70 this year. The grand family reunion was planned to coincide with his birthday and the announcement of his retirement. Everyone knew Thomas would take over as CEO. That had been the plan since we were children. What nobody expected was what came next. 2 days before the announcement, my father called me into his office. "James," he said, leaning back in his leather chair, "you've always been the reliable one, the steady one." He sighed, running a hand through his silver hair. "But the company needs more than reliability now. It needs vision." I nodded, keeping my face carefully neutral. I'd heard this speech before. "Thomas will take over as CEO," he continued, "and Michael will be CIO. They've already got some exciting plans for expansion." I waited for him to mention my role. The silence stretched uncomfortably. "And me?" I finally asked. My father looked away, suddenly interested in the model ship on his desk. "We're bringing in someone from outside for the CFO position. Fresh blood, new ideas." The words hit me like a physical blow. After 15 years, my voice was barely a whisper. "You're replacing me." He had the decency to look uncomfortable. "Not replacing. We're offering you a position on the board. Advisory capacity. Less day-to-day stress, less responsibility, less power, less everything." "This decision," I said carefully, "was it unanimous?" My father's hesitation told me everything. Thomas and Michael had orchestrated this. "My own brother's what's best for the company," my father said finally. I stood up, legs oddly steady despite the earthquake happening inside me. "I see," was all I said before walking out. That night, I received an email, formal notice of my transition to the board, effective immediately. My replacement, a slick MBA from Morgan Stanley, would start the following Monday. They couldn't even wait until after my father's birthday celebration to push me out. The next day I went to the office early to clear out my desk, 15 years of my life in 3 cardboard boxes. As I was leaving, I ran into Thomas in the elevator. "James," he said, surprised, "what are you doing here so early?" I held up my boxes. Understanding dawned on his face. "Ah, well, the transition. Dad told you." I nodded. "Congratulations on the promotion." Thomas had the grace to look uncomfortable. "It's what's best for the company. James, you understand that, right? Nothing personal, but it was personal, very personal." Thomas shifted awkwardly. "You're still coming to Dad's birthday dinner, right?" "The whole family will be there, of course," I said, my voice perfectly even. "I wouldn't miss it." The elevator doors opened, and I walked out without looking back. At home, I sat with my boxes untouched in the hallway. 15 years, 80-hour weeks, holidays missed, a marriage sacrificed, all for a company that could discard me without a second thought. But it wasn't just the company, it was my family. My flesh and blood had decided I was disposable. I spent that day in a fog, moving mechanically through my empty house. But as evening fell, something changed inside me. The shock began to fade, replaced by a cold, clear purpose. I would not let them see me broken. I would show up at that birthday dinner with my head held high, and I would watch them very, very carefully. The dinner was at my father's favorite restaurant, an upscale seafood place overlooking the ocean. I arrived 20 minutes early and asked for a table on the terrace, rather than joining the private room reserved for our party. The motto, it seemed confused but accommodated me. Through the windows, I watched my family arrive. First my parents, then Thomas and his perfect wife and children, then Michael with his new fiancée, aunts, uncles, cousins. Everyone was there, dressed in their finest, ready to celebrate not just my father's birthday but the new era of Harrington Maritime. Without me, not one of them came to ask why I was sitting outside alone. The waiter returned with my meal, a simple grilled fish. As I ate, I watched through the windows. Champagne was flowing freely. At one point, my mother glanced out and saw me. Our eyes met briefly before she looked away, her smile faltering momentarily. She leaned over to my father, whispered something. He looked out, frowned, then deliberately turned his back to the window. That was when I knew. They had all agreed to this approach. Pretend I wasn't there. Pretend everything was normal. Pretend they hadn't just betrayed and discarded a son and brother who had given everything to the family business. I finished my meal slowly, savoring each bite, washing it down with the excellent scotch. Inside, Thomas was now standing, making some speech. Everyone was laughing, clapping. A birthday cake appeared, candles blazing. I called the waiter over as they were singing. "I'd like to pay for everything," I said quietly. "Their entire celebration. The cake, the champagne, everything." The waiter hesitated. "Sir, that bill will be ... substantial." I smiled thinly. "I'm aware. I also want to add a 25% gratuity for the staff." His eyes widened slightly. "Very generous, sir. I'll arrange it immediately." I handed him my credit card, then resumed watching the festivities through the glass. For 15 years, I'd managed the finances of a multi-million-dollar company. I'd looked at spreadsheets and financial reports until my eyes blurred, and in doing so I'd noticed things. Small inconsistencies, unusual transfers, strange patterns in client billings. Nothing major, nothing worth raising alarms about, enough to make me curious. I'd started keeping notes, detailed, meticulous notes. It had become a habit, really. My own private audit of Harrington Maritime's books. Not because I suspected anything serious, but because that's who I was, thorough, cautious, detail-oriented. Those traits might not be as flashy as Thomas's charm or Michael's creativity, but they had kept Harrington Maritime profitable for 15 years, and they had also created a comprehensive record of every financial transaction the company had made during my tenure. I watched as my father blew out his candles. If I'd been inside, I would have heard them cheering. Instead, I sipped my scotch and considered the future. When I'd been abruptly removed as CFO, I'd taken nothing from the office but personal belongings. No company files, no financial records, nothing that wasn't mine. I didn't need to. Everything I needed was already safely stored in multiple locations, the result of years of careful documentation. Not taken in anger or with malicious intent, but simply accumulated through the diligent practices of a cautious financial officer. The waiter returned with the check folder and my credit card. "It's all been taken care of, sir. The manager asked me to thank you for your generosity." I nodded, signing the receipt and adding an additional cash tip for him personally. "One more thing," I said. "When do you plan to inform them that the bill has been paid?" He glanced at his watch. "The manager said he would tell them when they asked for the check, which should be soon." "Perfect," I said, standing. "I'll be leaving now. Tell them ... I paused, considering my words carefully. "Tell them it was a gift from the former CFO." The waiter's eyes widened slightly, but he nodded. "Yes, sir, I understand." As I walked through the parking lot, I felt lighter somehow. The Harringtons had made their choice. Now it was time to make mine. Over the next few weeks I maintained complete silence. No calls, no emails, no contact with any family members. I moved methodically, like I was executing a carefully planned financial strategy. First, I bought a modest but comfortable cottage on the coast of Maine, about 2 hours from the family's main operations. Close enough to keep an eye on things, far enough to start fresh. Next, I contacted 3 former clients. I had personal relationships with ones who had always dealt directly with me rather than Thomas or Michael. Just friendly check-ins, catching up. I didn't disparage Harrington Maritime or mention my departure. I simply listened. And what I heard was interesting. Service quality had declined. Response times were slower. Prices had inexplicably increased. My replacement, it seemed, was not working out as planned. Through industry contacts, I heard that Thomas had immediately implemented his visionary expansion plan, purchasing 2 new ships and committing to contracts that stretched our ... their fleet thin. Michael had redesigned their logistics system, causing chaos in the shipping schedules. The first call came 3 weeks after the birthday dinner. Thomas, his voice strained, despite his attempt at casual friendliness. "James, how are you? Haven't heard from you in a while. I let the silence stretch before answering. I'm well, Thomas. What can I do for you? He cleared his throat. Well, we're having a bit of a situation with the Anderson account. They're threatening to take their business elsewhere, and you always had a good relationship with them. I said, keeping my voice neutral, and another uncomfortable pause. I thought maybe you could reach out to them, smooth things over, for the family. I almost laughed. Now I was family again when they needed something. I'm afraid I can't help, I said evenly. As you pointed out, what's best for the company is new leadership and fresh ideas. I wouldn't want to interfere with that vision. I hung up before he could respond. More calls followed. From Michael, from my father, each more desperate than the last. Apparently, the new CFO had discovered irregularities in the books. Nothing major, they assured me. Just confusing entries that needed clarification. I deflected each call politely but firmly. I'm no longer with the company, I reminded them. These questions should go to your new CFO. Meanwhile, I was building something new. Using my extensive knowledge of the shipping industry and the contacts I'd developed over 15 years, I created a consulting firm specializing in maritime financial operations. Small at first, just me working from my cottage with a laptop and a phone, but word spread quickly. Former clients, impressed with my past performance, sought my advice. Competitor companies, aware of my reputation, requested my services. Within 2 months, I had to hire an assistant. By the 3rd month, I had 3 employees and was turning down work. But I wasn't just building a new business. I was watching and waiting, because those irregularities the new CFO had found were just the tip of the iceberg. The notes I'd compiled over years documented a pattern of questionable decisions. Nothing illegal, necessarily, but definitely unsustainable. Thomas's grand expansion plans were built on financial projections that I knew were wildly optimistic. Michael's operational changes had created inefficiencies that were bleeding money daily, and without me there to apply the brakes, they were accelerating toward disaster. The 4th month brought another family event, my nephew's graduation. An invitation arrived in the mail, clearly a peace offering. I sent a generous gift but declined to attend. Instead, I continued building my new life and business. My small consulting firm was gaining a reputation for excellence. Industry publications had begun to mention us. Former colleagues reached out, interested in joining my team. I remained polite but distant with my family. When they called, which was increasingly often as their financial situation deteriorated, I listened, expressed sympathy, but offered no solutions. And I continued to monitor Harrington Maritime through industry channels and former associates who still worked there. 6 months after my removal, Harrington Maritime declared bankruptcy. Thomas had overextended on the expansion, taking on enormous debt to purchase ships they couldn't adequately staff or manage. Michael's operational innovations had alienated long-term clients who took their business elsewhere. The new CFO, overwhelmed by the snowballing financial disaster, had resigned after just 4 months. The news didn't give me pleasure. These were still my family members, people I had loved and trusted. But I felt a certain vindication. My caution, my attention to detail, my lack of vision. These had been the very things keeping the company stable all those years. The real blow came a week later when the Harrington family homed the sprawling coastal property where we had grown up, which had been in our family for 3 generations, was put up for sale to cover debts. That was when my mother called, sobbing, "James, please, we need your help. Your father won't admit it, but he's devastated. This is killing him." Her voice broke. "We made a terrible mistake." For the first time in months, I felt my resolve waver. "What exactly are you asking me to do, Mom? Come home," she pleaded. "Help us fix this mess. You always knew how to fix things." I closed my eyes, suddenly exhausted. I can't just wave a magic wand and make everything better. The company's in bankruptcy. But you must know people, have connections. The desperation in her voice was painful to hear. "I'll think about it," I said finally. "That's all I can promise right now." I spent that night staring at the ceiling, wrestling with complicated emotions, anger, hurt, vindication, but also grief, and underneath it all a persistent sense of family obligation that wouldn't quite die despite everything. The next morning I made some calls. I had indeed made connections over the years with investors, with industry leaders, with financial institutions, people who respected my work and my integrity. By the end of the day, I had arranged a meeting with a potential investor group who might be interested in acquiring and restructuring Harrington Maritime, not out of the goodness of their hearts, but because with proper management, the company still had value. I called my father. "I've set up a meeting," I said without preamble. "Wednesday at 2 p.m. The Sullivan Group is interested in possibly acquiring and restructuring the company." Silence, then a shaky inhale. "You did that for us. After everything, I did it for the employees who were losing their jobs." I corrected him, "and for the family legacy. But I have conditions." "Anything," he said quickly. "Thomas and Michael need to step down from operational roles," I stated flatly. "They can remain on the board if the new owners agree, but no direct management. The new owners will bring in their own executive team." A long pause. "They won't like that." That's not my concern, I replied. Those are my terms for facilitating this meeting. Take it or leave it. Another pause. I'll talk to them. The meeting went better than expected. The Sullivan Group saw potential in Harrington Maritime's established roots and client relationships. They agreed to retain as many employees as possible and to keep the Harrington name. To my surprise, they also asked if I would consider returning as CFO under their ownership. I declined politely. My consulting firm was thriving, and I had no desire to step back into the past. As promised, Thomas and Michael were removed from operational roles, though they were offered minor positions on the new board, largely symbolic, with little real power. My father was given an honorary chairman emeritus position, mainly to save face in the industry. The family home was saved, though significant assets had to be liquidated to satisfy creditors. Which brings me back to that restaurant terrace, 1 year after the fateful birthday dinner. This time, the family gathering was to celebrate the successful restructuring of Harrington Maritime under new ownership. My entire family was there: parents, brothers, their spouses, children, extended relatives, everyone except me. I had been invited, of course, multiple times, with increasing urgency. My mother had called the day before, practically begging, "Please, James, it would mean so much to your father, to all of us," but I had declined politely. "I have other commitments," I'd said. "Give everyone my best." Instead, I made a reservation at the same restaurant, at the same terrace table overlooking the ocean. I arrived early, watching as my family filtered in, still unaware of my presence outside. The scene was eerily similar to a year before, but the mood seemed different, more subdued. My father looked older, the lines in his face deeper. Thomas and Michael moved with less confidence, their smiles strained. I ordered the same meal, the same scotch, watched the same family dynamics play out behind glass. But this time, when the waiter came to take my payment, I had one additional request. "Please deliver this to them," I said, handing him an envelope along with my credit card. Inside was a simple note. "Congratulations on the restructuring. Wishing you all the best in your new roles." James, the waiter's eyes flickered with recognition. "Sir, if I may, ... You were here last year as well, weren't you?" I nodded. "You paid for their celebration then too." "Good memory," I said with a small smile. He hesitated. "If you don't mind my asking ... why sit out here alone again? Why pay for their celebration when..." He trailed off, professional discretion reasserting itself. When they pushed me out, I finished for him. I considered the question seriously, because this isn't about revenge. It's about showing the man and myself that I've moved beyond what happened, that I can wish them well from a distance. I gestured toward the private room. "They're still my family, but I've built a new life now, one that doesn't depend on their approval or inclusion." The waiter nodded thoughtfully. "I'll deliver your note with the message that their bill has been paid." I thanked him, finished my drink, and stood to leave. Through the window, I saw the waiter enter the private room, speak to my father, hand him the envelope. I watched as my father opened it, read the brief message, then looked up sharply, scanning the restaurant. His eyes found me through the window. For a long moment, we looked at each other. Then, slowly, he stood. Others at the table noticed, turned to follow his gaze. My mother, Thomas, Michael, one by one, they saw me. I gave them a small nod and a slight smile. Then I turned and walked away, not in anger, not in hurt, simply moving forward on my own path. My phone began ringing before I reached my car. I let it go to voicemail. Tomorrow, perhaps I would listen to their messages. Tomorrow, perhaps I would decide whether to begin rebuilding those bridges. But tonight, I drove along the coastal road to my cottage. Windows down, the salt air filling my lungs. Free, on my own terms, and for the first time in years, completely at peace with myself. If this story resonated with you, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Your support means the world to us, and it helps others find these stories of personal growth and resilience in the face of family challenges. Remember, sometimes the greatest revenge isn't getting even, it's moving forward and finding happiness on your own terms.